Welcome to the Safety and Risk Success podcast with me, Christian Harris. Mental health is a massive issue, a massive challenge, or a massive opportunity, depending on how you look at it. But it's something that affects us all, and something that my guest today, Geeta Basson, will explain to us in this Safety Roundtable recording. It's an area that we've got a lot of room to improve on. We are doing stuff. Some of that is working, clearly, but there's a huge amount more that we could do. And Geeta's message is really all about trying to get us from being reactive to proactive in this space. Hope you enjoy this Safety Roundtable interactive recording. Let us know on social media your thoughts. And if you've got value from this, please give us a like, a comment, a share, a follow on your podcasting platform of choice. Enjoy this episode all around mental health. Cheers.
Welcome to the Safety and Risk Success podcast with Christian Harris. We believe that proactive safety and risk management powers business performance. Each week we explore this theme, sharing guests, stories, insights, trends, hints and tips. You can find us on all the major podcasting platforms, and video versions are available on YouTube. But for now, let's join the conversation with Christian.
So thank you to everybody for joining today's session, where we're going to be speaking about a really, really important topic with a fantastic guest, Geeta, who's going to introduce herself in a moment. This is designed to be interactive, so Geeta and I will have a conversation, but we absolutely would encourage you to join in, share your opinions, ask us questions, give us your experiences and insights around this topic of mental health. It's obviously a big, big topic, and we'd love to hear from you what you've experienced, what you felt about it, what you're doing, what's working for you, etc., etc. So, very much encourage some interactivity. So, Geeta, thank you for joining. Perhaps you could start by just giving a very quick intro to yourself so everybody's kind of got that bit of context.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. So, Geeta Basson, I created the company Rewind Your Mind. I come from a construction background, worked in construction, probably not as long as some of you, but during my time there, I was training as a therapist and I saw the absolute need for mental health help and support. And within therapy, I started helping a team. And within 3 months, the whole site office changed. It was so amazing. And that's when my husband said, well, why are you still working in construction? Why don't you help them? So I moved and now I deliver workshops, and I'm so passionate about construction specifically, but obviously what I do applies to other industries as well. So yeah, that's me.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's great to have you. As I say, it's a big, big topic, this. To start with, it'd be great for Geeta and I to understand where everyone is at with this. So, in the chat, wherever you're watching this, or even if you're listening to this as a replay on the podcast or watching on YouTube or whatever, fire into the chat and complete this sentence because this will give us some great context. Mental health at our site or at our company is mostly treated as blank. So let us know what that blank is from your perspective, and that will enable us to see where you guys are at, and we can then kind of try and structure what we're talking about around that a little bit as well. So, Geeta, we've mentioned it's obviously mental health is something that relates to everybody. Could you talk to us a bit about, I suppose, I hesitate to call it a problem, but the kind of the size of the issue, the challenge here? Got any data or any thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure. As a basis, I guess I don't know how much everyone's aware of statistics, but if we look at EAPs, which are employee assistance programs, there's 72% of UK companies that mainly use EAPs as their main solution. Now, an EAP is literally where you call in when you are distressed or going through a difficult time, you'll call in and you ask them for support and help. Now, on average, there's only 2 to 5% use of EAPs. So it's
Wow.
extremely low. They're not really being utilized at all. And the few that are using them, 60% of those calls to EAPs are signposted to self-help. And I remember once calling an EAP. I was going through a lot of anxiety, and they said to me, "Oh, yeah, we hear you. Um, do some breathing techniques, maybe, see how you're feeling, and call us back in 2 weeks." And I was like, gosh, I need more help than this. Even as a therapist, I wanted someone to speak to, and that wasn't there. And another statistic is only 20% of those 60% calls actually reach counseling. Now, statistically, EAPs are clearly unsuccessful, sadly, and not really making much of an impact. On the other hand, we also have now mental health first aiders, and everyone's jumped on the bandwagon. So many got trained as mental health first aiders, which I thought was great. So, average coverage in construction, 68% is our mental health first aider trained, 48% in manufacturing, and 40% in transport. So, that's big numbers.
Mm.
However, 60% of those workers said they won't approach a mental health first aider, mainly due to stigma, fear, maybe they're seen as unfit for work. So they're worried those things are coming out. And I guess that then brings us to our first discussion, our first roundtable with these statistics.
Yeah. So if we think about you shared, I think you said 2 to 5% of people are using these resources. How does that compare to what we know about uh, the proportion of people that need some help in mental health? Because obviously it's going to be much larger than that 2 to 5%, I'm sure.
Yeah, I don't have a specific statistic on that at the moment, Christian, but obviously, if you look at just the statistics of suicide in construction, I'm not even talking about the other industries.
Yeah.
2 men every single day in the UK commit suicide. That's massive, absolutely massive. So you can imagine if there's only 2% of people calling an EAP or whatever the statistics is for a mental health first aider, these people aren't getting help. They're just not getting the help because there's no real relationship. It's someone at the end of the line. And every time you call an EAP, you'll speak to someone else.
Yeah.
Plus, I guess EAPs aren't really designed to address root causes of mental distress at work. We've mentioned low engagement. There's a huge stigma and distrust. So people are worried about confidentiality, job security, they're unfit for work. And I think very much so, EAPs are typically engaged after a problem escalated. So there's a delayed intervention, there's missed opportunities for prevention before something happens.
Yeah, yeah. Just a few people, I won't read out names, but people have put in the chat to answer the question of mental
Mm,
health is mostly treated as blank, putting out a fire. Uh, Conversely, a very important aspect of taking care of and supporting our frontline teams. Mental health at our site is a known risk that we're paying more and more attention to.
good.
Secondary, uh, mostly treated as something that should be addressed and not ignored. Mostly treated as a priority, um, and a personal circumstance is encouraged to be discussed openly. So,
Good.
just in those few responses, we're seeing quite an interesting
Mm,
dichotomy, aren't we? Some workplaces seem to be, um, you know, quite on top of it, just based on that feeling of how it's treated and how it's seen, and others struggling a little bit. In your experience, how far have we gone on this? So you gave a bit of data there, but
mm.
how far down the track are we in terms of taking this, I guess, seriously enough?
I think there's been a lot of industries, companies all over that's really putting in an effort, that's really trying to make things work. There's a lot of charities that's supporting specific industries, which is all great. It's a lot more talked about. But I think also everything that has been put in place, like getting all the mental health first aiders trained, for instance, or getting EAPs in place, now we realize, well, it's not quite working. So there is still something lacking, and it's exploring that further. What is it that's really missing? A big warning sign for me as well, even though we've put all of these things in place, 20 years ago, if you looked at construction, there was one suicide every 2 days. 20 years on, there's two suicides every day. So what has changed in this time, and what's not being properly addressed here? So even though we're putting in effort, we're still failing.
Yeah, yeah. And you've mentioned a couple of the models that seem to be quite common, the employee assistance programs and having mental health first aiders. Shared a bit of data about that. Why would you say that they are not sufficient? Why are they not cutting the mustard, as it were?
We'll sort of touch base on the EAPs already. Typically engage after a problem escalated, and people are they've just got that stigma. For the mental health first aiders, I guess having them on site creates the illusion that there's coverage, we're everywhere, but deeper structural issues completely remain unaddressed. Lots of the mental health first aiders has a poster behind the toilet cubicle saying, I'm a mental health first aider. They might have a sticker on a hard hat, and that's as far as it goes.
Mm.
Now, in general, mental health first aiders are just volunteers. So they already
Yeah.
have time and capacity constraints. There's huge training gaps. So they did the training, but where's the follow up? There's no peer support. They don't have mentoring. They don't have anything to take it further. These guys aren't really seen. Everyone knows they're there, but because they're not talking the talk and showing that they know about mental health, no one's going to speak to them. So they're visible without engagement.
Yeah.
And I think they very much lack support and role clarity. There's no structured follow up, there's no mentoring, there's no defined pathway. And again, workers will avoid them due to stigma and fear. They don't want to talk to people who works with them. They'd rather speak to someone outside of the business, but they want a connection. They're not going to speak to a stranger over the phone. They want that absolute building rapport with someone before they go and speak to them, but also knowing it is completely confidential.
Mm-hmm. Anybody that's joining us on the Zoom live, really welcome your thoughts, your experiences on any of these topics. So, if you want to join in and come and share your insights, share your feelings, share any opinions on this topic and some of the things we're talking about, then just go to reactions, raise your hand, and you can come up and have a chat with us, because we'd love to make this as interactive as possible. Andrew, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we do the BA stuff, the signposting, etc. We have the first aiders. We stress how culturally important it is to us. One of the ways in which we've moved forward our culture in terms of health and safety has been leading indicators, getting people to report and show leading indicators that we can then thematically sort of identify and address, often by physical changes, things to equipment, whatever it may be.
I think we're struggling to hear. We're struggling to hear you, Andrew.
Oh, you're
Are you
not, are you?
struggling as well, Geeta?
I
We're sort
can't
of
hear
getting.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit.
I'm going to change
So
the microphone to my computer one from the thing, because I'm sort of.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, sorry, we didn't hear
Bring you back
anything
on.
you said. I've been trying to follow.
I was getting the odd word. But yeah, no. Ed in the chat has also mentioned that Andrew was breaking up. Let's let Andrew. Um, this is one of the perils of doing these live sessions where you make it interactive. That sometimes people have connection issues or whatever it might be. So it's just one of those things that you have to deal with, and then we normally find some kind of solution when we do. So Geeta, it sounds to me like what you're saying is that one of the challenges is that we're being sort of quite reactive. So the um, uh, assistance programs are too reactive. um, oh, it sounds like Andrew's got his. Are you sorted now, Andrew? Do you think?
Hopefully.
Can we try again?
That sounds clearer.
Echo,
Yeah,
but
it's still echoing though for some reason. Let me just. How's that?
I think it's better.
Yeah.
There we are. Are we all right now?
Yes,
Good.
Yes.
perfect.
Sorry about that. Sorry about that. I was trying to. My nephew's doing work shadowing with me, so I'll put it on the big screen. So I think that may well. So I've just gone back to just my laptop. What I was saying is, we do the things you say, Geeta. So we're doing the mental health first aiders. We have the EAP programs. We're supported by our charity for the industry, which is Perennial, and they're also now doing some workshops. So I was part of the workshop development, and I actually attended one the other day, and we're trying to push those out on LinkedIn because for us, for me, it's a wider sector thing. You know, culturally, we're a contractor in grounds maintenance, just to give you a context. So it's mainly frontline teams based at depots or individuals part of a mobile team who may not see a manager or a team leader that frequently.
Okay.
We focus very heavily in our physical health and safety, I will call it for want of a better term, on leading indicators, whether that be observations or near misses, near hits, whatever we term them in the particular contracts as we take over them. And that's been really effective in terms of building a culture that's reduced our accidents, our RIDDORs, our significant incidents. What ideas do you have or suggestions do you have about having a similar kind of process around mental health? And the context for me, I'll give you context. I won't name the person, but this person was 50 odd years old, went to Cambridge. I worked with this person in the 90s and noughties, and he committed suicide due to personal issues outside of work in the end. And it was particularly poignant to me. So I'd actually arranged to meet him 2 days later, having seen his posts on LinkedIn. And I kind of knew it was a leading indicator that it wasn't quite right. So I rang him up, said, "Is everything all right? How are you doing?" He said, "Oh," and he went through. I said, "Okay, let's have a chat." Then I'm in, I'm doing a national role, and obviously he didn't. I couldn't get hold of him on the day, and then I found out that 2 days prior, it had become a tipping point for him. So obviously I reacted because of what I saw on LinkedIn. But I'm just wondering, are there, I wasn't successful there, but are there sort of those kind of, what are the leading indicators we could harness to activate, bring forward the intervention, I guess is what I'm asking. Hopefully you heard that this time.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tricky question because every single person will behave differently when they are going through suicidal thoughts, or even just going through depression, going through anxiety, going through whatever it may be, overwhelm. There's so many different indicators, but in general, whatever they're dealing with, whenever it's a mental health problem, people tend to withdraw. They withdraw, they go quiet, they isolate, they push people away. They don't really want to talk about stuff. And the worst problem is if you are isolating and the attitude you put out, people recognize, look, you don't want to talk to me. So guess what? People then don't talk to you. They're like, okay, well, he obviously needs space, or he's been so rude to me in the way he's responded. I don't want to be involved in him. And it's just the way they're reacting. Generally, you'll start noticing physical behaviors. So either they are irritable, they're very short of fuse, they might, like I said, isolate. Self-care goes out the window. So not really, looking disheveled, not really shaved, not really worried about the hair, whatever that may be. So there are specific signs you can already start noticing, but in general, people don't always pick up on these things because we're not always in tune with our teams, or we think, okay, yeah, I know he's going through a rough time. I'll check in with him every day, and this is one thing that a recent client of mine mentioned to me. He was suicidal. I managed to literally pull him from committing suicide. And And I've been working with him now for about 3 or 4 months. And I said to him, look, if you ever get this low again, who are you going to call? And he said to me, no one. And I said, what do you mean, no one? We've built this whole support network for you. He says, well, that's the thing. My dad calls me since I tried to commit suicide. He calls me on a daily basis, every morning and every evening. But all he says to me, hi, how are you doing? Yeah, I'm good. Okay, you're alive. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye. Hi, how are you doing? Oh, you survived the day. Good. Bye. There's no real connection. He also said his mother talks about him instead of to him. She doesn't ask him how he's doing. She just tells everyone what's happened. His brother, when he did try and call him to say, look, something's happened, I've been triggered, do you have time, can I talk through it? Oh no, I'm sorry, I'm really busy, maybe tomorrow. And then he tries tomorrow. Oh no, he couldn't get away from him quickly enough. I remember when I sent him to a hospital and asked him to tell them he needs to book him, they need to book him in because he's suicidal. The hospital then isolated him, put him in a room all by himself for 3 hours, came back, put a stamp on his form that says red flagged, and told him, we've informed your GP, you can go home now. And I'm like, what? The GP he went to said to him, because he was a bit shy talking about his mental health, so he went in and said, oh, I've got a mole on my back. Can you look at that? And then maybe I want to talk about something else too. And the doctor said, well, I don't have time. There's 10 minutes. Do you want to talk about your mole or your mental health? And immediately he said, okay, the mole, because he felt dismissed. His best friend, who he feels he wants to talk to, is now going through her own mental health struggles. So he doesn't want to burden her. He doesn't have a relationship anymore, which caused all of this. So can you see there's so many people in his life, but no one is actually connected to him. Not a single person. And this is what happens. This is why one of the biggest things I try and do is we have to build real relationships. It can't be a call center. It can't be some stranger on the other end of the line. It can be a mental health first aider, but they need to show that they really are involved in mental health, that they can be proactive, that they can help when there's help. And it's not just now someone needs help. It needs to be embedded constantly so that people, it becomes the norm to just see mental health and hear mental health and the words and everything about it all the time. I'm not sure if that's answered your question. There's so much we have to learn. Leadership has to learn what to spot. That's very
that's where I started from. So I do appreciate the information about spotting it in terms of the behavioural changes, the withdrawals, and I might try and work on with my head of health and safety how we can capture that. You know, our HR department do some great work on mental health and mental health training as well, but it's how we capture these leading indicators, which we can then, I mean, this sounds a bit horrible, but, you know, put in some form of internal process and expectation that will then trigger, and I'm going to use more words around our classic health and safety, an investigation, a diagnostic element, a follow-up, a series of actions. Now, I may change those words, but I think what you've said is really helpful in terms of maybe it's something that we can put in our, you know, we can have a think about it, and then we can push this out as part of our sort of road shows that we do with our frontline staff and our managers about actually, you know, one of our initiatives is going to be to include mental health in the same way that we look at our health and safety. We can then embed it in the audits because, you know, we all know what gets measured gets done at some stage. And then we can hopefully make the same kind of cultural changes in this particular area of caring for our workforce that we have in the physical health and safety and the kind of observations that drive a lot of our changes in that. So it has been very helpful. I'm not sure I could do the stuff behind, because as I say, I just know, you know, with the anecdote I gave, I knew he wasn't himself, and I arranged to meet him, but I didn't, you know, we didn't talk about committing suicide or anything like that. It was just, you all right, oh, I am in your local area for work on this particular day. Why don't we catch up and have a coffee? You know, and I've worked elsewhere where, I mean, obviously there's a lot of people on the international people on call, but there are groups in the UK that are quite positive. If you get that I've worked with elsewhere, One is called Andy's Man's Club, which has really been quite effective. They've got some great videos and things like that. And so we do use those, but they are all our, I guess our approach, if I would be critical of it, is it's therefore, you know, whether it's an EAP, it's almost, even though we've got the mental health first aiders, it's quite external to our business. And I don't mean that negative, because I think we are trying, we have a great purpose here, but I think, you know, we should all reflect on what we do. And, you know, your 1 person to 2 people statistic is pretty blooming frightening, to be quite honest with you.
Absolutely.
So thank you.
Yeah, and what I also wanted to add, which I've created toolkit, which we'll share at the end. But one of the things, so you'll have lots of detail in there. One of the things that you can do as well is like a stress risk review almost. So think of it as like a mental pressure gauge for your team. And you were saying, you know, there's a lot of physical stuff that you're building in for safety, but no one really tracks a lot of mental health stuff. When you have your stress review built in, you can include things like overtime levels. You know, our team's regularly clocking 50, 60 plus hours, because that will have an effect on their sleep, on their mental health, their irritability, all sorts. What are the absenteeism trends? You know, are there more sick days? Are there clusters of stress-related absences that's happening? Do you track the absences? Why are I absent? Lots of them will just say, oh, I food poisoning. But if there's more, if you're more open about mental health, they'll start opening up and say, I just needed a day, or I was totally overwhelmed. It comes with time. It's not going to happen immediately, but that's why we need to embed it and incorporate it. You have your mental health first aiders, your EAP. How can you red flag? How can you push them more towards it to really use it? It's just a gauge, and I've built it into the toolkit that will show you how to do it. So you're literally tracking every single bit of information. I met a guy ages ago who said, oh, well, they do behavioral reviews. Someone didn't wear their safety goggles. What was the behavior? What happened? Blah, blah, blah. But no one asks, why is he dealing with stress at the moment? Is he overwhelmed? What's going on in his head? Because when you are overwhelmed, sometimes you're not going to think clearly, so you'll make mistakes. Another thing that comes up a lot is ADHD, for instance. People with ADHD are going to be risk takers. They are more impulsive, so they're going to just jump into things. So are those things being tracked? And do you know how to manage someone with ADHD? Because that's a whole new topic in itself. And there's so many people in construction that doesn't even know they've got it, but construction is a perfect workplace for them. You know, they don't have to be academic to do construction, which is why they are pushed automatically towards it. So yeah, you really have to start tracking. And I spoke to a company the other day and I said, look, based on all the work I've done with you over the last year, can you give me this and this and this and this and this? The first thing he said to me was, not really. It's a heavily guarded information. HR don't really share it with anyone, which I think is wrong. It needs to be shared. And secondly, no, they're not tracking everything. There's a lot of things missing from it. And you can't, I always said, you can't be safe on site if you're not safe in mind. That is absolutely interconnected. Mental health, mental safety is physical safety.
Makes very, very good sense. Ed, you've got your hand up. Do you want to come in and ask a question or give a comment or something?
Yeah. My observation, listening with everything, Ghitta, great stuff. But I think I agree with the EAP too far down the road. But I think the frontline supervisors are the people that really need to get the training, and they're missing that. Because we wait too long because they miss it. I know 10 years ago I had a gentleman who worked for me, and we had a person with ADHD who we knew, it was a known. He told us that, and you could tell how he operated during the day was unique from the rest of the people. And you know, we sat down with the group and we said, we've got this new employee coming in, you know, let's make sure we're tuned in. And his comment to me, from what he was a supervisor, he goes, well, he's just got to suck it up.
Nope.
And I sat there and went, no way. But
Good
the
on you.
kind of things that they're missing, the frontline supervisors are missing the body language. It's not, they don't go with the safety side of it where we see something, we say something. People are missing that. And that's one big thing that we need to start to speak up as people in the organization, get that training for the frontline supervisors. And then one last thing is, I don't know if it would ever work, but I have friends that go to grief support groups, which to me is, at least for them, I see enthusiasm from people that were depressed because of the loss of a loved one.
Yeah.
So this brought a lot of them back. You can see, and I don't know how it is in England, but in the US, pickleball is a big thing, and people, that same group gets into pickleball and golf and other things so that they start to interact together.
Yeah.
And that is kind of it's a grouping, but it helps, and that support helps. So getting the frontline supervisors help, and maybe getting group support would be some of the things that might help us as organizations, just like we do at safety, because safety, the high level guys buy in. And in New York State, where I am, we've got mental health is now included in workers' compensation payments,
Right.
which is fantastic. But getting them to say, I need mental help to get the payments,
Yeah.
it's another deal, because now, like you said, I think it's a stigmatism or
Unfit.
whatever you want to say.
Yeah.
Yes,
Why
you're
to
labeled.
be replaced?
So
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you so much for your input on that. And that's a huge thing. When I say leadership training, it's your black hats. It's anyone who supervises a team, they need to be trained on these things. Because if you think about it, how much time do you spend at home compared to at work? The people that see you are the people that work with you. They see you 80% of the time. The people at home don't see you as much, and you can easily, yes, fair enough, you can mask at home, you can mask at work, but ultimately your behaviors are going to come out more at work. Maybe you can still hide it a little bit at home, maybe from the kids or the wife or something. But the guys you work with are going to spot things a lot quicker than anyone else. Sometimes they even spot something's wrong with you before you even realize yourself something's wrong, just in the way you behave. So they've got to know how to spot those hidden stressors. And, otherwise it's going to become a safety and or performance issue, if it's not spotted in time and dealt with. If leadership are trained on this, they'll be able to build stronger and more trusting teams because they understand their workers, they know where they're coming from. If it's ADHD or autism, they can deal with them in a better way, because you have to treat these people differently in a sense because their brain focuses on different things or does different things. It will ultimately improve communication, it will improve morale, it will reduce errors, because people often, like you said, they stay silent. And the more you are on top of it as a leader, and the more you spot it, the more you can get them to open up. And I think also sometimes people can be very confused in the way they feel, because in construction, especially, I'm sure obviously in the other high risk industries as well, and especially for men, they're always told, man up, pull yourself together, you'll be okay, we're all okay, I've done this my whole life and no one's ever come to help me, you can do it too. And so men stay silent, or they just go home confused about what they're feeling, and who do they speak to about it? How do they change that? Thanks for your input, Ed.
Definitely not an easy one to overcome, is it? Ben has said here in the chat, actually, it's hard for people to be vulnerable because, to pick up on Ed's point, in order to obtain the payments for support, you have to admit you need them, and therefore you've got to put yourself out there and be vulnerable and come forward, and that can be a very, very hard step to take.
Absolutely. I mean, just to chip into that quickly, and this is an example at some point I wanted to share with you. Let me just find all the details so I don't miss some steps on it. I have obviously my background is therapy, so I work one-to-one with individuals. And I've been working with Tideway for a 6-month program that they trialed to see how to do it. And I went on a bi-weekly basis over 5 sites, and I'll do 2 or 3 sites on a day. And what we started with was I'll deliver a workshop on stress management or burnout or something so that they get to know me, they know what I'm talking about, they'll get some tips and tools. And then I stayed on for 2 or 3 hours on that site, just in case someone wanted to come talk to me about whatever problem. At the start, no one came, but I walked around on site. I had my PPE on. I'll throw in mental health prompts and get the conversation going. I'll join them in the smoking area or the canteens and just chatted with them. Overall, now that we've completed the 6 months, I've had over 80 workers who came to see me for one-to-one support. 2 of those were suicidal, and they got immediate help. The sites weren't big sites. They were about 20 to 60 people per site, so we're not talking masses. But I was there instantly when they needed help. I mean, one morning they called me at 7:05 and say, Geeta, please help. They would call me 9 o'clock in the evening and say, can you be here tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock? And I just, you have to be there for these people. And that's that one-to-one support. And it wouldn't have happened if I just turned up and said, okay, there's a therapist, her poster is on the wall, call her. It's not going to happen. But because I was there consistently talking to them, showing them that I can help, I eventually had people come up to me and say, well, I lost my cat. And I've had the cat for 18 years, and the boys are going to laugh at me if I tell them that. But I'm really sad about it. And I just feel like I need to talk to someone. I've had men come up and say, my wife has been diagnosed with breast cancer and I'm angry about it. I want to be supportive, but I'm so angry. How do I help? How do I change? People who said they had Crohn's disease, just been diagnosed, they've got to wear a pouch. What do they do? How are they going to do their job? They don't want to tell their supervisors about this because what if they just get thrown off the job and replaced the next day? And I had a mental health workshop that I attended recently, and I brought up the question to the panel, and I said to them, look, these guys are the breadwinners, and most often than not, they are contractors. So if they booked off for a mental health issue, where's the money going to come from? Who's going to support them? They don't want to take time off and admit to having a mental health problem because then they're off work for a week or 6 weeks, however long it takes. Who's going to pay the bills? So they keep quiet. And no one was able to answer that question for me yet. So I'm still hunting for it. Who pays the bills or who helps them while they take time out? Because they need it.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, isn't it? Luke?
Yeah, it's always been in my mind with that challenge that it's a cycle that is really difficult to break because the more that someone feels they've got nowhere to go, the more stressed they become and the more it aggravates the original problem, and then they become more stressed and it just carries on as a cycle. And I'm happy to be proved wrong on this, but where there are other protected characteristics in the UK under regulations, such as your age, gender, that sort of thing, where you are protected from these things, mental health is a difficult one to prove
Yeah.
that there's that level where you are protected. And so, although companies can have the policies, have the procedures, put mental health first aiders in place, it actually comes down to with the individual, how do you really convince them and really get them to understand that they can feel protected and safe discussing mental health issues without thinking, do you know what? One way or another, they'll find a way to sack me for this, and we could end up losing our employment. And the worry about that can be another reason why you would keep quiet and
Yeah.
not say anything and need help outside. I don't know whether the answer would be thinking about in employment support or the availability of a protected characteristic to make it so that employers have to stay within a certain structure and have to give that support. Don't know what your thoughts are on that.
I think the more mental health is talked about on site by everyone, and it's not just talked about, people can actually see um, leadership taking ownership, standing up for it. The more that's done, the more the staff will see, well, hang on a second, I am going to be supported. I'm going to be okay. Yes, there are limits. How far do you push it? How far do you allow someone? How many days can you give them time off? You know, all those things play a role. And I guess that's where team leaders need to sit down and discuss. They have to have a policy in place. I ask companies now, they don't have a policy in place. They don't even have a suicide policy in place, never mind just normal mental health policies. Um, it's very much for me, it's not just a health and safety issue. You need to have HR in on it. You have to have the project directors in on it, operations. Everyone needs to be together as have an actual plan for this. If I think about the work I've done with Tideway, obviously, gosh, the leadership on that project has been amazing. I haven't seen another construction company that does as much as these guys do. And so many people that worked there, who's now left onto other projects, before they left, they've said how amazing it was working with Tideway because they felt supported. They could see it everywhere, unlike any other company they've worked before. And some have actually been hesitant to leave, you know, because then they're going into a new job. Obviously, Tideway's wrapping up now. They're going into a new job and they won't have that support. They know they won't have it. But I think Tideway is absolutely led from top down, where every single where they could, they infiltrated and tried to push in mental health. And instantly, when something happened, I was there. I was doing a talk. There was a guy that sadly passed away from a heart attack. They called me that at 9 o'clock that night. I was there for 4 days in a row, giving support, giving workshops, doing grief, trauma support, and all sorts. And immediately these guys felt safe and secured and looked after and supported. So whenever they struggled, and I think also that's why we ended up having more than 80 people did one-to-one sessions with me, because they felt, look, I need help. Geeta's not going to tell anyone what my issue is, but I know I can talk to her. And I know I can go to a supervisor or manager and say, call Geeta or give me the number. I need her help now. And they will support it. So they saw it throughout all the sites for the last year anyway.
No, that's great. It just shows that actually it's walking the talk, isn't it? And how do we move from being reactive to proactive? Well, actually, we need to really be very clear and demonstrably supporting the fact that we want people to, be looked after in this area. And,
Yeah.
we've got to, it's an investment up front, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not waiting till something happens. It's actually we've got to invest that time, effort, energy up front, and then that's what will unlock people having those conversations, because those 80 people as a proportion that came and spoke to you, if you compare that to the 2 to 5% of people that you said would call the advice line, you're talking orders of magnitude more, aren't you?
Yes, exactly. And it's just because I was there building the relationships consistently, but I'm also an outsider. I'm not embedded in the company. So it felt more, I guess, confident. Well, it is more confidential, but they got to know me throughout the process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting sort of challenge, isn't it? And I see a parallel here with health and safety, physical, occupational health and safety. So I often speak about a health and safety manager or head of health and safety should be like a GP. So they should be able to diagnose well a lot of problems, a huge breadth of issues, but they can't necessarily treat much, because to have that knowledge that's a mile wide to be able to diagnose all these things, you're never going to be more than an inch deep. And I think where sometimes people go wrong is that they try to be not only the GP but also the specialist surgeon to try and fix the problems. Of course, there are some problems they can fix, but um, the analogy works here as well, doesn't it? Based on, I think, what you've said, which is, it's great to have some internal um, resources and to train those managers to spot the leading indicators, as we were saying, but actually, do we need to go a bit further than that with external support to really help these people once we've diagnosed them?
Yeah, and that's the thing. You don't need to fix anyone. You just need to spot it. If you can spot it, then you can alert. And again, in one of my toolkits that I've got for you, there's a whole breakdown. I've laid it out exactly how to do this. Something that can be given to a supervisor or a leader or mental health first aider. There's step-by-step processes. And once you've got these things in place, it's not going to take a lot of time to manage. It's just naturally built in. One of the things I've mentioned in there, for instance, is just, I mean, it'd be interesting to know, and just drop a 1 in the comment if it's yes and a 2 if it's no. But how many of you have integrated mental health prompts into your toolbox talks on a daily or even a weekly basis? Because it's such a simple thing to do. You get a mental health first aider and just say, okay, we've got our toolbox talks now. It's 10 minutes or 15 minutes long. And someone throws in a comment and say, guys, just today, right now, on a scale of 1 to 10, how clear is your headspace today? And everyone throws out a number and they have an overall idea of how everyone's feeling. And maybe that sparks a conversation. And it doesn't have to take more than 3 minutes. And next week you throw in, how do you mentally clock out at the end of your shift? And people say, oh, well, I go for a beer. I just go for a walk, whatever it may be. And it sparks conversation. So it's such a simple thing to do. Why aren't we doing it? Most of the time we're not doing it because we don't know how. We don't have the resources. So I'm hoping with the toolkit that I've created, with all the information I've put in there, I've sort of created a 30-day planner for you, just to put some of it in place already. It's obviously a lot more work, but it's the basics that can start it off.
Yeah, and most people in the comments have been saying that, yeah, they're not doing that. So that is an actionable takeaway that we can all do. Tell us a bit more about the toolkit, Geeta, because we are running sort of towards the end of the
Yeah.
session. So tell us a bit about the toolkit and where we can get it. I'll share the QR code in a minute, and then
Yeah.
there'll be time for maybe 1 or 2 last questions if anybody has any.
I try to build in 6 high impact proactive strategies in the toolbox. There's loads more you can do, but I've just focused on those 3. So the one was the 3-minute toolbox talks. I've given prompts and ideas of how to do it, what to do. It's simple and easy. Just mentioning, which I've mentioned before, is building real relationships. So you shift from reactive to preventative, not just call centers and not just having a poster on the wall for your mental health first aiders. How do you do that? What do you do? So many companies are now employing on-site therapists. For instance, me working with Tideway, on-site therapists, but I also work online. So some of the guys get time out at work to go and sit in an office and work with me one-to-one online. You can have line managers and supervisors that are trained in psychological safety. Mental health first aiders, not just as a first aider, but with extra support. They need to be involved in toolbox talks. They need to do check-ins or be a lot more visible. Wellbeing leads, they need to connect personal support efforts with broader cultural change. It needs to be embedded everywhere you can. I've mentioned empowering mental health first aiders. What else is in there? Leadership training, why it's important, how it can help. Another thing I have also mentioned was the monthly stress risk reviews. How do you embed that into your teams, checking up on them on a regular basis and making sure, why did you have a close call? Why was there an accident? Why did you forget to put on your safety goggles or whatever it may be? Tracking that. And then an interesting thing I haven't mentioned, which isn't for everyone, but, and again, put in the chat box a 1 or a 2, 1 for yes and 2 for no. Do any of you have decompression zones? Now, this is a zone for sensory or quiet time. So they aren't luxury lounges. They are a zone where you can go and take a micro break. It's designed to protect mental clarity, reduce incident risk, reinforce psychological safety. There's so many sites now that have prayer rooms, and especially the Indian community, I've noticed. They will always say, when I talk to them about mental health, they'll tell me, oh, but I don't need anything else because I have prayer. And prayer is great because it gives them a timeout. It gives them obviously that connection with their God or whatever they call it, to have that connection, but it gives them time out. It gives them quiet time. It gives them a space where they can go and pray and be alone. So it'd be interesting to know how many have decompression zones, and is that something you can have on your site or in your workplace to help people just take time out from, micro breaks during the day, especially when things can be quite stressful. So those are the things I've covered in the toolbox, in the toolkit. And there's lots more information where that comes from. So you can always get in touch with me and just let me know if there's anything of interest to you, and I can talk you through some things.
Thanks, Geeta. I've put the QR code for that on the screen if you're watching or if you're with us live. If you're listening to this on the podcast as a replay, then the link will be in the show notes. And just finally, then, obviously, there's a lot more we can talk about on this topic. So perhaps we'll do another session in the future. But if people are interested in connecting with you, having a chat with you, would LinkedIn be the best way of doing that?
Yeah, I suppose LinkedIn is probably the easiest. I have a website, rewindyourmind.co.uk, although I think it needs a bit updating now. It's a pain in my thigh, my website at the moment. So LinkedIn is probably the best. And within that, I've also put on my Calendly link in my LinkedIn, so you can always book a consultation or strategy call if you need to.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Geeta. Really valuable conversation in all sorts of ways, and lots of good takeaways for people to go away into their organizations and implement. And I think, the key message here that I've taken is, just we've got to be a bit more proactive. So hopefully some of what we've spoken about today and some of the tools that Geeta shared, some of those quick wins that she has suggested as well can be helpful and leave us in a better space with our teams going forward.
Yeah.
So yeah, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me. And I don't know if there's any more questions.
Yeah, we've got another couple of minutes if anybody's got any more questions. Yeah, we've got a couple of minutes, but I do try and keep it on time because if you stick it in the diary for an hour, then it's good to be respectful of people's time. Good stuff. Well, look, thanks so much, everybody, for joining us, and look forward to seeing you again on another Safety Roundtable soon. Cheers.
Thank you for having me. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us on the Safety and Risk Success podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please hit follow and do share on social media. Does anyone you know spring to mind as a great guest, even yourself? If so, please contact us on podcast@slipsafety.co.uk. See you next week for another episode.